there was second extraordinary meeting of the Federal Executive Council that held yesterday, being Tuesday, the 23rd day of May 2023. Three Federal Executive Council memos were presented by the Office of the Attorney General for consideration of the Council. And the three memos were indeed taken, deliberated upon, and approved. The first memo that was taken was a memo for the regularization of the public-private partnership arrangement between the Federal Ministry of Justice and Messrs. Nexus of South Africa, and it has to do with publication of the laws of the Federation of Nigeria and all Nigeria law reform. By way of giving a historical insight as to what the contract is all about, this is about publication of the Compendium of Laws of the Federation. In 2003 and 2005, there was an agreement entered into between Federal Ministry of Justice and a company in South Africa, which contract has to do with continuous publication of the laws of Nigeria, having them compiled as a book for 15 years. Now, that contract was meant to be a rollover contract so that by way of a sustainable arrangement, we will be having compendium of laws of the Federation published periodically. That contract had eventually elapsed, and we felt there were numerous developments that set in after the expiration, while the contract was in place. Technological development set in, and a lot of other need, inclusive of the ICRC Act, inclusive, among others, the need for review, so as to factor the interest of Nigeria more. So it was arising from that the contract is now reviewed, one, to allow for the accommodation of the technological development that's set in, and indeed the application and operation of the ICRC Act as it relates to public-private partnership. So the implication is, with the approval of the Council, we will have a continuous publication of the laws of the Federation of Nigeria in form of a book and in a way and manner that it will conform with the quality and indeed international best practices associated with the quality. So that was the first memo that was taken by the Federal Executive Council, was deliberated upon and approved. The second memo is a memo relating to operationalization and deployment of federal government contracts administration system. When we came into office, we inherited an arbitral award liability of around $10 billion against the federal government, arising from a purported breach of a contract which is popularly known as P&ID. And then our assessment of the contract is the fact that a lot of discretion on the part of the lawyers responsible for vetting federal government contract was tolerated, which discretion now resulted in some level of overlooking of the major clauses that could have, at the end of the day, provided some level of protection to the interest of the federal government. But because there was no standardization and discretion on the part of lawyers was tolerated, unfortunately, we had a breach on account of which we were, a case was instituted against the federal government, and then an award of around $10 billion was eventually made against the interest of the federal government. So with that unfortunate situation in mind, the need have arisen for us to consider the best way that we can minimize the level of discretion being exercised by lawyers and bring about standardization in line with international best practices that can now accord protection to the interest of the federal government. And then the federal contract administration system was now put in place, which is now a digitalized arrangement that will be accommodative of international contracts and clauses that can now limit the exercise of discretion of the lawyers as it relates to the fundamental clauses in an agreement, which clauses must naturally protect the interests of the federal government, and then the need has equally arisen therefrom to ensure at the end of the day building exceptional capacity as it relates to the to the drafting of contracts and ensuring that certain clauses are developed in respect of which no discretion is given to the lawyers vetting contracts, so as to ensure going forward that the interest of the federal government is not compromised in the art of drafting contracts that are meant to be executed in Nigeria. So that memo was equally taken and approved. The third memo that was presented by the Office of the Attorney General is a memo for the implementation of public-private partnership arrangement also between the Federal Ministry of Justice and Messiah's JAFREX Integrated Services Limited for the publishing and marketing of the Court of Appeal specialized law reports. It is important to bring to your notice that our Court of Records, talking of the High Courts, the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court, among others, have a tradition of compiling their judgments on a daily basis. And those judgments are compiled and books are sold to lawyers to serve as a reference material for citation in court and determination of cases. We have around 20 Court of Appeal divisions across Nigeria. And for the purpose of having some level of consistency and uniformity in compilation process, we have in existence what is known as a Court of Appeal specialized law reports over time. It started from West African Court of Appeal even before Nigeria gained independence, and that tradition has been sustained. So it is equally a memo presented seeking the approval of the Council to renew the agreement that has been in existence for the publication of this law report, but this time around taking into consideration the new innovations, with particular reference to the public-private partnership arrangement, which has not been the tradition before, and then the ICRC Act, which has not been in existence, and new innovations associated with technology to have them accommodated in the contract going forward. The Council memo was presented, a Council memo which accommodated all these new innovations relating to the new law that is in place, relating to public-private partnership arrangement which has not been in place, and the technological component consideration. And then that memo was now presented before the Federal Executive Council for the purpose of restoring the publication of the Court of Appeal specialized law report. Law report is a compendium of the judgments of the Court of Appeal over time. Thank you very much, distinguished members.